I have been working on a new library, or really been working on two, but I'm going to do a showcase of this one. There are a few things I want to add before the final release, and those are shown in the README. I don't know if this one's possible, but I do want to add enum support and then just get string escapes fully working for the config. And maybe a YAML writer before the 1.0 release, but I think I might add that in a subsequent release. Either way, we are going to demonstrate how you would use this library. So we can do from ComprehensiveConfig, import, and let me actually remember how the hell to do this, because I've been working on a lot of libraries and my job. Yeah, we'll want to import config spec. Right, and we'll also want to do from ComprehensiveConfig dot, and then we are going to do a toml writer. We're going to import toml writer. So there are two ways to do this, and I'm going to show you the first. So we can do my config, and this is going to be a config spec. And so how this library works is you can define your config sort of like a Pydantic model, and it will validate it for you, and that includes like having text fields with regex to make sure like, oh, this is a valid email, and so on and so forth. So that is how this works. And making sure that something is a valid float or a valid integer, all that kind of garbage. So first we're going to define some just really basic stuff. We're just going to say email, and we are going to then say that this is, and what we're going to do is we'll do from ComprehensiveConfig.spec import text. We're also going to import integer and float. So we're going to say this is a text field, and my keyboard is being evil. Perks of moving a bunch, hence why I'm in this particular room. We can set a default value, or we can also say the regex, and you can set like an email regex. I'm gonna go in here and copy this email regex because I don't have this memorized off the top of my head. Who would have guessed, really? There we go. Okay, and we're also going to say there is a password, and this is going to be a text field, and it's going to be regex, or yeah, no regex actually. We're not going to do any regex here. We don't need to do regex for this. But hypothetically, you could see if it matches like a valid regex. I don't know how you would exactly do that, but yeah, you can do validation later. That is something I want to add is custom validators, but I don't currently have that. And if you hover over this, you default value and regex as the things you can do. And so we're going to add another thing, and we'll just say like thread count, and this will be an integer, which means it cannot be a floating point number. And you can actually set the name and whether or not it's nullable. I don't believe there are any nullable fields in toml, so support for nullable fields is iffy in some config formats, but it's something you have to kind of deal with on your own. I can't hold your hand on everything. So now we're going to do, let's see, what's something I can do a float for? Let's just have like something random multiplier, and this will be a floating point number of some kind. Now, if I do my config dot, and I do load, I can pick a file and a writer. So I can pick example showcase.toml. Now this does not exist as of this current moment. So I can say that config equals this, and now I can actually just go in and do config dot, and I can get the password, and it'll be text. And I can also set the value, and setting it as a string does in fact work. This is an accessor, or sorry, a descriptor. Works similar to app property in Python. And so you can do stuff like this. If I say x equals config.password and I hover over, it should say that x is a string, right? But if you hover over this, it will, oh, okay, earlier it said it was not a string, it said it was a text object, but, you know, whatever. The type checker lies. But you can do stuff like that. So we can print our config.email, and we can also print our other config results. So we do thread count, and we can also do multiplier. All right. Now this will not work. I need to do something first. I need to first create a basic config. Now, this is just for this demonstration. This is not required. You can actually set default values, and I can do this for you if you'd like. Part of the beauty of this library. But for now, I will show you how to do it manually. Now, you might want to do this if you need maybe more fine-grained control of maybe white space, or other attributes. Now just note, when you save, it's not going to save those attributes into the file. It'll overwrite that. It's going to overwrite the file completely, and so any white space or custom commenting that you had will get overwritten. So keep that in mind. There is probably a way I could get it to do otherwise, and you know, keep in all the custom formatting. But I would need to kind of rewrite the way I do my TOML writer and my JSON writer, and I don't really foresee a need to do that. Okay, so we have our email, and this is going to be example@email.com, and our password, and we'll set it blank. And then our thread count, this has to be an integer, set it to 10, and our multiplier, we'll set it to 10. This is also good. Wait, let's set it to 12 just to have some kind of distinction. So this works. And we can, oh wait, no, this is the wrong file. Whoops. We can run this file. And config writer is not, oh. I forgot we need to instantiate it, if I'm remembering correctly. Let's see. What does it say? Writer is none. Config writer is not specified. That's evil. That's not true at all. Alright, that might actually be a bug, gang. We're gonna do some on the fly fixinating. Let's see, it should be an init. Where is this coming from? Here. Okay. Wait a minute. Wait. Auto load is set to true. Okay. This will happen if your auto load is set to true. We can say auto load equals false. This will stop it from automatically loading config because we have not set it up to be allowed to do this. Fuck. It didn't work. Oh, because I'm slow. It's auto underscore load. Okay. There we go. So we told it not to automatically load. And there we go. We have our config values loading. But we can keep auto load equal to true. And bear with me. We can set our writer equal to a toml writer. We can set the, I think it's default file, and we can set it to a specific value. Let me just make sure of that. Yeah, default file. And we can set it to example underscore showcase.toml. And you're going to wonder, how do you access this? Well, if you want to access the auto-loaded config, you can access it from the class. Yep. This works just fine. This will create an instance, and these will allow you to get stuff from the instance instead. If you want to get these specific values, I believe, don't quote me on it, but you can do myconfig._class, and then you can get the password. And maybe I'm lying to you, but I'm pretty certain that's how it works. Now, if we load it, you notice it works just fine, and it's auto-loaded the config value. So, now I'm gonna rename this. I'm gonna put .old. You're gonna notice, it's not gonna work. We could not find that file. It's file not found errors. It's a bad time. Okay, so we can, I believe it's auto create equals true. Let me take a look. Oh, no, create file. So this will automatically create the file. Now it says configuration does not have a full default value. What does this mean? Well, it means there are one or more fields that do not have a default value for us to build a default configuration from. So if that is the case, we can use our first positional argument here and place example data. And I do believe it has to follow the regex in order to be loaded, so keep that in mind. Any constraints that are on these fields have to be true, like they have to work on the default values as well. Okay, so if we do this, you'll notice we have our example config. Now if we load it again, we get the same values, but if I do this, it does not override it, and we get this value instead. Just keep that in mind. Now, you know that toml has some interesting fancy features, really cool stuff. I'm going to show you a couple things. First, I'm going to show you the JSON writer, just because I think that is something that needs to be shown off as well. So we can import our JSON writer, and instead we can use the JSON writer, and we can change our file extension to JSON. And if we do this, you'll notice it creates this here, and now you have the same thing in JSON. And if we put like something to make this incorrect, it said example at email did not match regex pattern. It says value error field myconfig.email did not match regex pattern. So the config did not match your regex pattern. Cool? Awesome. So we got that figured out. Now, there's something else we can do. we can add sections, and this is particularly important when it comes to TOML configuration. And you can actually have section lists. So you can have lists of sections. This works under a dictionary specifically, and it's pretty cool. But for now, I'm going to show you how to make a section. So we can create a class. We're going to call it mySection, and we're going to make it a section. And we can import this from ComprehensiveConfig.spec, and it's just called section. Now you can actually name the section, I believe like this, if I'm remembering correctly, but we will not do that because I am lazy. So we can actually put all of these in a section. Well, actually, instead of calling it my section, we'll call it credentials. Okay. Now, if we load it, missing fields credentials. Now, it will not automatically update things when you have new configuration made. You're gonna have to create your own kind of like, what's that tool for like database migrations, like that, but for your config. At some point, I might add config migrations as a feature. In which case there needs to be like a history, and it's Alembic, that's what it's called, and it'll have like an Alembic, like, you know, revision kind of setup built in, but again, I'd rather not worry about it for now. So either way, you're gonna have to delete this file when we make a change like that, and my config, yeah, okay, so we cannot access the email because now it is in credentials.email. Like so. And again, this is actually coming from an instance here. And there we go. We have our credentials. And you notice, and now it has a subsection. Very cool stuff. Now we can also do lots of stuff. We can have a list. We can have a, I think it's like a model. What did I call it? I'm going to inspect the library. Let's see here. Table spec. So we're also going to import a table spec here. And we are going to import table. So these are other types that we have. So we can have my table, and we'll set it to a new table. And we're going to have to delete our config as before. And we'll also print my config.myTable. So we're going to have to set a default value for our table, and we will also probably want to annotate this. Okay, so our default value for our table, we're just going to have it be empty, and we're going to have our key type. Is that my girlfriend?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I'm making a little video.
Oh, cool. What you making?
It is a tutorial for my one of my libraries.
Cool. Goon tutorial?
No. I'm recording.
Oh. Whoops.
It's good. You're good. There's a. So we can set our key type, and it can be any of our. Oh, you're going to the library? All right. Have fun. Okay. Love you. Okay. So we can have our key type here, and this can be text, and that also means you can have regex as well. So you can more fine-tune your keys. So like, let's say you had a dictionary for your credentials where the key was an email and the value was your password, then you could easily make sure the keys were valid emails automatically. Okay, and now we can have a value type, and we will set this as an integer. And again, you can do more specific typing if you'd like. And we can annotate this as a string and an int. Actually, this might not work. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, there was a problem with this. I'm trying to remember that, actually. Anyway. Either way. Or actually, wait, hold on. We can do this. There. Yeah, perfect. Okay. Yeah, okay, this works. I forgot you can do that. I forgot I set that up. So we can do this here. We can also set up my list, and we can have it as a list, let's say integers, and we'll say list. And for this one, you don't actually have to annotate because it will kind of figure it out if I set that up correctly, honestly. But we'll see. But we can say like 10, 12, 14, etc. And we can have our inner type equal to integer. And again, you can set more specific subtyping if you like. Again, if you want a list of emails or a list of like PGP keys or GPG, however it is, it's one of those acronyms, then you could easily have that. You can verify it with regex, or alternatively make your own custom config verifier, and that would work just fine. And you can derive it from the other existing ones, and basically you have to change like one function and just have it raise a value error upon the extra criteria that we throw in there. Either way, so we can set my list. Now I'm also going to show you table spec. So funny model, we're gonna say this is a table spec. Now, we can say that this just has the same stuff as our credentials. Right? We'll just do that. Right? And now we can say that I'm correct. I could be very wrong about how I'm doing this. Trying to remember off the top of my head. But we can say model thing equals, and we can set it to an instance of funny model. And now we need a default value for it. I believe, but I'm not quite certain. Okay, no, you have to set the default value as a dictionary. Right. I can't remember if one of the ways to do it was with like the quargs, but I again cannot remember. Actually, no, you can. Or no, that might make a value. I'm trying to remember. Okay, we'll do it this way. And we will say that email, and we will make that example at email.com. Now, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, these default value things don't work, but I also could be lying to you. Because I'll be real, there's some emergent behavior that I did not intend but was really good, and so I kept it. Always a good time, you know? I'll just make this the word silly. And so there's our default value. Right? And if I'm correct, which I rarely am, this should work. And we can actually set this to my list. And we can set this to model thing. And that's like a dictionary type deal. Actually, it says it's unknown. Good stuff. Okay. Yeah, that should be a funny model, but it says it's unknown. Actually, don't know why it says unknown. Okay. And there you go. So we can have a very specific model here. And if we look, it has created that. The model thing here. We have our credentials section. We have a list. Now, sections are always going to kind of be at the bottom, as opposed to like global properties. Now, I'm going to show you sections in regards to TOML real quick. So if I go back to showcase and I instead instantiate a toml writer, this will be a little bit more useful. And I'll just delete the old toml. Invalid statement. Should not have happened, but I could be very, very wrong. That's odd. Why is the toml library doing that? That is a bug, if it was not immediately obvious. I believe I have to do funny model. I might actually have to do this. Models might be a little weird, if I'm remembering, but I could be just sorely mistaken. Okay, no, I was wrong. Okay, this is a bug that needs to be fixed, but either way, do that at some point. Okay. Now, regardless, we will just do this. What the fuck? That should not be happening. I'll be very well real with you. Actually, don't know what's happening. Oh, I told it to load a JSON file. Okay. No, everything's fine. I'm just dumb. I hope you understand. I told it to load a JSON file. It needs to load a toml file. There we go. Okay. Notice we have all these things. Our model looks like this. And we have our list, we have our table, and we can put values into that table. And if we actually do like an integer key and an integer value, shouldn't do that. Although I guess this got automatically interpolated as a string, so that might actually be valid toml. I'm not 100% certain, because I don't know the toml spec that well. I know it enough to make this, essentially. Okay. Either way, we're going to do something kind of interesting. We're going to have a table of sections. So we can have our key type be text and have it be a section. And I cannot remember if you can use table specs in here, but I could just be wrong. But we're going to do this, and it has no attribute, all fields. Oh, yeah, you actually have to set it to a specific section. You have to set it to, let's say, credentials. So we want to set it to a credentials section. And we had an additional key that we didn't need, and that was this model thing, so we just remove it. Type my config has, right? I genuinely forget that if I make a change, it has to be made everywhere. Okay, now we can look at our toml, and you notice nothing's changed. My table is still set to a table. Shouldn't actually be set that way. Trying to remember how this works, actually. I have it done up in another thing. I think you have to do this. Oh, yeah, no, right, because I have to delete this first. Dumbass. Okay. So we set a default there. Okay. Now, if we look at it, this is a section. My table. Now, this is bad, if you've noticed, because my list is now under the my table section, which it should not be. This is a bug. This will be fixed before you get to it. But essentially, now I can do my underscore table dot subsection, and I can basically set the same thing as here. So I can have individual credentials as individual sections. Is missing field in my list. Right, because this needs to be up here. Perfect. So you will want to put all of these at the bottom. Otherwise, things kind of get a little messed up. But there you go. So we have a subsection and we have a credentials object. Awesome. There you go. You can also use these in a lot of places, including in these inner types and the value types. You can have these models if you'd like. That is completely fine. You can also do cool things, like you can set this to an integer or text. And you can have the text follow some kind of regex pattern if you'd like. You can have it follow a regex pattern that makes it look like text. Not my business, not my problem, right? That's on you. Now, I can include, whoa, this would have errored before. And ta-da, it works. So you can use unions, and this overwrites default union behavior, which is, this is an interesting thing. This returns a union, despite this not normally returning a union, because if you were to do a union between like a class instance and something, it doesn't normally do that. It doesn't normally do anything. And things get really messy when you instead have a union between like a model, because a model is a class, and we do not instantiate the class here. This is a type. And now usually you couldn't do this, right? If I do this, actually, now I'm thinking about it because of the way this works. If I do this, this would usually error. You can't have a type unioned with value. Doesn't usually work. But it does work. And it works just fine. I'm realizing that these are all our model object when they should not be, because it tries them in order, and it validated that as okay. It's not okay. It lied. But we can do this, and there you go. That makes more sense. So it kind of does them in order because there's some things that are going to be overlapping, and so instead it just does them, and if the first one's okay, then it uses that. If the first one's not okay and the second one's okay, it uses that. Third one's okay, instead it'll use that, so on and so forth down the chain, again, until it finds one that works, and then it'll use it. And that's how it works. This should be validating, though. It's not validating for some reason. I'll fix that. Either way. So this is, you can do cool unions, and instead of a list of int, it can be a list of int, string, or funny model, because funny model is a type. We can also use it in normal kinds of unions. We can also do this here, and this will work. And so you can get kind of more fine-grained control of what you allow in certain sections. Very soon, I want to add the ability to use enums and to validate with enums. So I'm going to do a little bit of bug fixing, obviously, and making sure everything works, and obviously add enums in. Basically, anything in here will be done before this is fully published. I am creating a tutorial right now to show you how to use it while it is in this stage, because I'm trying to get support for this kind of going. I think it's an interesting library. Could I have used Pydantic to achieve something similar? Yeah, probably. But I like the way I did it. I like the way this works. So, I should also note, if you have all this stuff, but you have auto load false, right? If you have auto load set to false, then you can actually do, I believe you can do my config like this, and it'll automatically use these values. I could be lying, but I'm fairly sure. And it'll do that instead. And you can load it, and it won't be on the class instance. You know, it'll return an instance. But it's pretty cool. So yeah, this is how this works. And there's, again, one last thing I want to show, and that is section docs. So you can add, put your login credentials below. Now, if I delete this, and I run it, and we go into here, this only works in languages that support this. So right now it is just TOML that supports this, because there's only TOML in JSON currently. When YAML is added, it will also support this. And you can also, if you're interested, create your own writers. So if you have some other format that you are interested in, you can create a writer for it. So if we go to config.io, we notice you just have to create an abstract writer, and these are just class methods that you have to create. And there's already ones for load and dump. It'll automatically use the ones for strings. But if you have like the JSON one, I have loads just set as JSON.loads, because that's all it needs to be. Right? And TOML, I believe I have, yeah, TOML.loads here as well. And I have load using TOML lib load, but I am doing just some fancy stuff where I handle a string file being, or string file name being passed in. And the dump one is just the superclass dump. Right? And that uses this. And it does a bunch of goofy stuff to generate your TOML. Right? There's no default TOML writer in Python, so I had to get creative. I mean, I could be lying about there being no default TOML writer in Python, but I'm fairly sure there isn't. Again, just could be wrong entirely. But there you go. This is basic configuration. You can actually modify these values, and then you can do like my config. I don't think you can do, you might not be able to do .save automatically, or you might have to put in my config. You might have to do ._inst to get the instance to save it, and then you have to specify, I think, a file and a writer. The instance could be none, so it's like, you know, not liking you very much, but there you go. But yeah, you can do auto loading and goofy stuff like that, and eventually there's just some features I would like to add. Again, enums being the primary one. I was hoping that there would be a good way, without doing like a code inspection through the inspect module, of getting these attribute docs. But there is not, because I would love if it were just like this, and then, you know, in your ISP or in your LSP, when you hovered, it would show you the attribute doc, same as it would show you in the config. That would be awesome. It doesn't do that. I'll find a way, maybe. It's just they're not saved anywhere. It's kind of a limitation of Python. There's been like a few forum posts and stuff, and like, you know, like a PEP made about it, but it has not happened. So unless it does happen, this will not be a feature that does exist currently. Either way, it's pretty cool. And that's, yeah, it's just really cool stuff. And I hope you enjoyed this.